Hey folks, since in the previous session we have performed multivariate analysis, so let's go ahead and try to perform something known as, again in this session, we will try to analyze whether the features that we have, whether useful or not, using something known as exploratory data analysis. So imagine I have a feature as, let's say, word share. And let's say in word share, let's say this is the distribution of, let's say, word share. So what we will do is we will say, hey, can I find distribution of word share when questions are similar? Let's say when questions are similar and when questions are not similar. Hey, can I find two distribution of this word share? So what I will do is I will say, cool, I can do that. So imagine this is the distribution of word share when the questions are not similar. Similarly, let's say this is the distribution when the questions are similar. Imagine I have two distribution. So if I have such kind of distribution, and you will figure out, as we have a very slight overlapping, which directly indicates that word share feature is definitely useful, because as there is very less overlapping, which directly indicates that I can separate our class 0 and class 1. Again, in this use case, we have a duplicate value as 0 and duplicate value as 1. It means I can set some threshold, and hence we are able to separate our target feature. That's why this feature is certainly useful. That's basically a very high level overview of how to select a feature. So what I will do is I will say, hey, can I define some function? And the moment I pass some feature, let's say feature f1, we will end up getting some visualization. So one visualization that you can think of course, your distribution plot. This is the first visualization that you can think of. Again, if you cannot inference from this distribution plot, you can always think for your either box plot, or just to make things more interactive, you can think for your variant plot. So what I will do is I will say, hey, can I define some function and can I write all the code for my distribution plot and of course for your variant plot. Now let's try to do it all the stuff, of course, using Python. So we will say function name is all about, imagine get underscore distribution. Cool. Let me pass some feature to this, and what I will do is I will say, hey, first and foremost, let's try to customize our own figure size, on which on top of that I have to showcase my visualization. I will say fig size is all about imagine 10,8. Cool. Now first and foremost, what I will do is I have to showcase my variant plot. I will say whilen. You can just press tab. This is exactly that function. Over here on x-axis, I have to mention my isDuplicate feature. Cool. So I will say this is basically my isDuplicate feature. And over here in y, I have to mention our feature. Then I have to mention on top of what data frame I have to perform all the operation. I will say data is all about df. Cool. And let's try to do all the stuff, but this time the turn goes to our distribution plot. So I will say distribution plot. Cool. This is exactly my distribution plot. And similar again, let me show you one more thing. If I will say, let's say df of is underscore duplicate equals to 0. Let me execute. This is the filter that we have. Now let's try to pass this filter in our df. Cool. Let me execute it. And let's try to access some feature. Imagine word underscore share. Cool. Let me just execute. So these are all the values of word share where questions are not similar. So what I will do is, first and foremost, in this distribution plot, I have to mention as it is all about our feature, because I have to replace it with feature, because I will receive feature from my own function. Cool. Let me just copy this code again. Let me paste it again. This time the turn goes to our 1. Cool. Now here comes an interesting thing. So I will say, imagine this is my entire figure. Again, this is typically known as figure, on which you have to showcase your visualizations. This is basically known as figure, or even you can term it as container. So on top of container, you have to map each and every visualization. So I will say, let's say this is our very first subplot, and let's say this is our second subplot. So let's say on top of first subplot, I have to showcase our variant plot. And let's say on top of second subplot, I have to showcase our, let's say, distribution plot. So just to do this, what I will say is I will say, hey, can I create some figure along with the subplot that we have. Hey, can I do this? Again, or even you can term it as 1 cross 2 matrix, because I have just one column and 2 rows. So if I will consider its index is 1, its index is 1. Hence you can think it as 1, 2, 1. Similarly, this one is all about 1, 2, 2, because its index is 2. 1, 2 typically means it has a dimension of 1 cross 2, and 1 basically means index. That's what it actually stands for. Now let's try to code up all this stuff. So I will say plt.subplot. Cool. I have to mention its index 1, 2, 1, which will goes to our vinyl plot. Cool. Let me just copy this line of code. This time it goes for your 1, 2, 2. Cool. Now the moment I will do all these things, I will say plt.show. Let me execute this line of code. Unfortunately, there is a syntax error that says, hey, positional argument follows keyword argument. Now let's try to debug that error. It says, hey, in this line, look at the pointer that you have. It says, hey, in this line you have probably error, because unfortunately we haven't provided our opening and closing brackets over here. Cool. Let me execute this line of code. Now what I will do is I will say, hey, can I call my function what I have defined, which is all about get underscore distribution, and can I pass some feature. So first and foremost, I will say df.columns just to cross check all the feature name that I have. So let's try to pass this word underscore common. So I will say it is all about nothing but word underscore common. Cool. Let me execute this line of code. These are some warnings that you are getting. Again, if you want to get rid of this, that's not a rocket science. Now look at the stuff that you are actually getting over here. Again, in case you want to showcase, or in case you want to showcase a ligand, first and foremost you have to assign your own color. So let's try to assign the own color. So I will say color is all about, let's say, red. Similarly, color is all about, let's say, blue. So I will say it's time for blue. Cool. Let me execute this line of code. Again, in case you want to get rid of this warning, I will say import warnings from our warnings module. Cool. I have to import something known as filter warnings, and I will say just use this filter warnings, and whenever a warning will come, just ignore that. Cool. Let me execute this line of code, and let me again execute this line of code. Now look at the power of the warning module that you have. Similarly, let's try to call this function for your fuzz ratio. So the moment I say this feature name is all about, let's say, fuzz ratio, it means I just need a visualization or a vinyl plot along with distribution plot with respect to our fuzz ratio. The moment I will execute this line of code, you will end up getting such amazing stuff. Now let's try to understand both the visualization that we have. Now you will figure out you have some overlapping region over here. Of course, when class is 1, it means we have some higher value of fuzz ratio. Look at this. We have some higher value of fuzz ratio that we have. But as we have, up to some extent, as we have some overlapping, it means this fuzz ratio, up to some extent, it is useful. It is certainly useful. Similarly, if I will inference from this vinyl plot, we can say as, on account of less overlapping, this feature fuzz ratio is amazing and of course useful in determining the class level. So that's basically how you can think of selecting some particular feature using something known as exploratory data analysis. Again, for those of you who have any doubt, I will extremely recommend you just to utilize the Q&A section as much as you can. So that's all about it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Keep learning, keep growing, keep practicing.